In my last video, I discussed some of the concerns that Halo fans have expressed in light of the discovery that Halo Infinite may end up being a live service with an emphasis on in-game purchases. The discovery was made when people noticed a job listing on Microsoft's official website for an online experience design director for 343 Industries, the studio that's currently behind Halo and developing the next entry, Infinite. Now, an online designer for a game series known for its online multiplayer mode is nothing unusual, but looking deeper into what this job position entails did raise a few alarms. For example, it states that one of the day-to-day responsibilities for an online design director would involve overseeing the implementation of microtransactions and Microsoft's planned business model, suggesting that the game will probably feature in-game purchases. More egregiously put was how one of the responsibilities that come with the position is to design and deliver a AAA player investment experience that focuses on fans' desire to express their passion for the franchise through microtransactions purchases, which, if you ask me, kind of reads like EA's infamous sense of pride and accomplishment justification to Battlefront 2's shady tactics, though it could just be referring to their goal to make in-game purchases cosmetics only. But still, that's a terrible way to put it, as bad as EA trying to sell turd as gold by touting how loot boxes are all about offering player choice. There are also heavy implications that this game will very much aim to be a live service, with one of the bullet points reading that applicants must be able to adapt to the changing business and community needs that come along with being a live service. One of the qualifications also involves having a comprehensive understanding of player psychology and what drives them to return to an experience, and considering game publishers have a history of patenting game systems that aim to psychologically manipulate players into partaking in monetization systems, you can imagine how this might be cause for concern. Unsurprisingly, this job listing began making the rounds around the internet via forums and media outlets reporting on this, and word did eventually get around to 343 Industries FPS studio head Chris Lee, who took to Twitter to address some of the feedback surrounding this issue. In response to one user who expressed anxiety on reports of Halo Infinite having microtransactions, here's what Chris had to say. "Keep the faith, it's appreciated. We're still working through final plans and we'll share more when we're ready, but I can definitely say that Halo Infinite will not include real money loot boxes." Now, I've seen a number of people interpreting this as meaning that we are in the clear as far as in-game purchases go, that the information in the job listing has been debunked. But it's important to understand what this response actually means. All Chris Lee is confirming here is that at the very least, there won't be glorified gambling in Halo Infinite. Even if there happen to be loot boxes in the game, it would seem as though players will not be able to spend real money on them. That's the promise being made here. However, loot boxes are simply one form of microtransactions. Just because the game won't feature gambling does not mean it won't feature in-game purchases. In fact, Chris Lee never outright denies the job listing's implication that Halo Infinite will be a live service, that it will feature microtransactions, and that they are hiring someone with extensive knowledge on player psychology. Similarly, just because Battlefield 5 has confirmed there won't be loot boxes, does not mean that it won't be a live service or that it won't feature in-game purchases. Same thing goes for Anthem. In fact, EA has already confirmed there will be cosmetic-focused microtransactions in both of these games. So the information featured in Chris Lee's response and in the job listing are not mutually exclusive. One does not debunk the other, they can both be true. There's a reason why the job listing is still up there. If it featured erroneous information, it would have been taken down immediately and we would have heard a clarification by now, or the job listing would have been corrected appropriately. With that said, it's definitely good to get confirmation that Halo Infinite will not resort to some of the scummier monetization tactics that the likes of EA, 2K, Activision Blizzard, you name it, like to partake in. But at the same time, keep in mind that upfront microtransactions is no guarantee of a good monetization system. They can still pave the way for scummy tactics like progression accelerators, paywalled content, paywalled features like character slots, so on and so forth. Granted, with how little we know about Halo Infinite, it is too early to say how the game will go about implementing monetization or live service functionalities. We still don't know if they'll feel intrusive or if they'll be enough in the background that they can for the most part be ignored or tolerated. It's also worth noting that live services aren't inherently bad as long as they are properly implemented. Two games that I like to point to as hallmarks for how live services should be done are Splatoon 2 and Monster Hunter World, which constantly keep the game alive and fresh via free updates with no strings attached, layered on top of a solid foundation. The one time Splatoon 2 did offer paid content, it was a bona fide expansion that added tons of new single-player content, as well as some really cool additions to multiplayer. These are games that actually leverage live services as a tool to enhance gameplay, rather than exploit it as a means to constantly release new items people can pay for, new justifications to monetize. There are live services that focus on keeping a game fresh, and then there are those that exploit live services to nickel and dime players. Where Halo Infinite will fall in that spectrum remains to be seen. Though if you watched my previous video, then you'll know that I'm not all that optimistic. Some have said that I'm jumping the gun and making too many presumptions, and you're probably not entirely wrong there, and it's certainly worth reiterating that we should wait and see until Halo Infinite is properly revealed and detailed before we resort to doom and gloom. But at the same time, from where I'm sitting, in my experience, given all that's happened in just the last year alone, when a job listing for a AAA game pops up listing a focus on live service, microtransactions, and player psychology all at once, there is cause for alarm and pessimism. This is especially true when we're dealing with the Halo franchise, which once used to deliver these iconic, polished, complete experiences with no strings attached. There is a wide range of opinions when it comes to Halo 5 and its wreck microtransactions. Some say it's tolerable enough, while others, particularly those who like to partake in the game's Warzone mode, deem them to be intrusive enough to mar the experience. But one sentiment that seems to be fairly universal is that Halo as a series certainly didn't get better for the introduction of microtransactions. At best, they were tolerated. The franchise would be better off if it indeed went back to its roots and delivered proper games whose design aren't affected or marred by the craving to monetize. Hell, one of the selling points for Halo Infinite that 343 provided was that it would return to the franchise's roots. And yet that's contradicted by a synopsis that states that the game will take the franchise to new and unexpected directions, and by how the game is shifting more and more towards monetization-based live service, which is the furthest thing from Halo roots. So yeah, personally speaking, I am very skeptical, but then again, we know next to nothing about the game, so it would be prudent to wait before claiming anything as definitive. I cannot say for sure whether Halo Infinite will be a step in the right direction or in the wrong direction. All I know is that nothing about what the job listing conveys currently gives off good vibes, and Chris Lee's assurance only indicates that the game won't have the worst form of microtransactions, but something not being the worst doesn't make it not bad. But hey, if 343 can prove me and my pessimism wrong, if it turns out they can achieve a good balance of old and new, if it turns out they can make proper use of live service as some games have done, I would welcome that with open arms. I would want to be proven wrong on my current sentiments. Until then though, in light of recent developments, for now, I am approaching this game with cautious trepidation. I really hope that Microsoft and 343 know what they're doing here. With Sony having unleashed a wave of top-notch exclusives over the past few years, many of which were completely devoid of microtransactions, with God of War and Spider-Man being highlights of 2018, Microsoft is facing an uphill battle, and they're taking great risk by pursuing a live service-focused Halo entry, given the stigma surrounding that model, which we have the likes of EA to thank for. All we can do for now, though, is wait and see what happens. Until then, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on Halo Infinite's job listing and Chris Lee's response in the comments below. With that, I would like to end this news update. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoy my content and would like to support this channel directly, consider donating on Patreon. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.